Oh, you didn't know? Your ass better call somebody!
The energy revealed. Brooklyn to Queens, reppin' both hoods. Rob and CP, keep it fire, misunderstood. Cheer 'em all loud, let the anthem flow. Mets fans unite at the pregame show. From city stand lights to the skyline greens, it's the heartbeat of Queens, the craziest dreams. Rob hype on the mic, CP's the fire spark. Together they ignite, voices like the park, fans dripped in jerseys. Legacy bold, the Metropolitan story forever told. Turnstile spinning, the crowd floods the gates. This is family, no time for debates. Crack of the Batman, the roar never fades. Queens in the blood, it's how champions are made. Cheer 'em all loud, let the anthem flow. Mets fans unite at the pregame show. From city stand lights to the skyline gleams, it's the heartbeat of Queens, the craziest dreams. 7-line swagger, vibes electric and wild. Mets legacy golden since I was a child. Orange crushed skies, let the battle ignite. Ride for the home team till the last fight.
What's up, Mets fans? Welcome back to the amazing Mets Pregame Show right here on the channel and on X. How is everybody doing on this Saturday night as the Mets play Game 2 of the series in Atlanta against the Braves as they beat the Braves, not the Nationals that you see at the bottom of your screen, 12-7 as it was a blowout, and then Ryan Helsley decided to make it somewhat interesting and actually had to warm up Edwin Diaz in the bullpen. But nonetheless, the Mets did put a beat down on the Atlanta Braves, and it just feels like the stars are aligning for the New York Mets. And it's not necessarily because the Mets have been good. It is the news of Zach Wheeler being out for the season. Obviously, personally and health-wise, you want him to make a full recovery because you don't want to see anybody have those type of issues. But we all remember the Matt Harvey thoracic outlet syndrome and is now plaguing Zach Wheeler. That is an injury that is hard to come back from, especially, Matt Harvey was still somewhat young, but he was around his 30s as well. Zach Wheeler is, around that age as well. And, getting ribs removed and, to relieve some pressure off of certain areas. It is huge. It is huge. And that's a big blow to the Phillies. That's their ace. Now you have Aaron Nola, who, got paid a lot of money to be a top starter, hasn't been the same, even coming back from injury. They got Ranger Suarez, who's a veteran, who's really good. But again, the Braves, the Phillies have a lot of issues pitching-wise at this point now. John Duran blew a game against the Nationals yesterday. That was big, and the Mets are 6 games out of a division. The Mets are a game and a half up on the Reds, as the Reds lost as well. Everything has aligned for the New York Mets to take full advantage of the problems of the teams they're dealing with right now. They're chasing the Phillies, and they're trying to, extend their lead against the Reds. And this is where the Mets have to take full advantage of it. And with the Frankie Montas injury, as I just posted a video about an hour ago, it leads to more conversation of why not just bring up the young kids. And I don't know if you guys saw the Mike Puma tweet about a half hour ago. Brandon Sproat is making his next start with Syracuse on Monday. Now, I said this. This makes no sense to not bring Brandon Sproat up the pitch in his next available time frame to start, and that's Monday. Why not just do it? Why not pitch him against the Phillies at home? Why not? He's making his start on Monday in Syracuse, and Kodai Senga is pitching the opener against the Phillies at home. Committee, I don't think they're bringing up Tong. I don't think there's a sense of urgency to do so. And there's probably a lot of trust in Senga and Manaya. I truly believe that. I said that from the beginning, guys. When there was conversations about bringing up McLean, just about a week and a half ago, that I don't think they want to bring up all these kids. Again, this wasn't in the plan. This is a as needed basis. This is a alternate plan or alternate situation that David Stearns never planned for. This was never supposed to happen. These guys are supposed to throw 140, 135, 140 innings in the minors this year and be ready to go for spring training to win jobs for the rotation. This is just what they're planning. This is what I talk about with David Stearns and the lack of change of philosophy or plan throughout a season. He has his plan and he sticks to it. He is not budging from that. The reason why Nolan McLean was brought up so late was because it was all about draft picks. And if he doesn't become rookie of the year, you get a draft pick. So they did everything they can to, manipulate calling him up to acquire an extra draft pick for next year's draft and also service time. And he keeps his rookie status for next year on top of getting that draft pick, because bringing him up as late as they did, it almost takes him out of the rookie of the year candidate situation, even if he pitches great. And that is why they didn't bring him up in June and why they brought him so late in August. So it's all about future situations when it comes to David Stearns. He doesn't look at the present as the end all be all. And I find that as a GM and president of baseball ops, I don't like it. I don't like it. I think there's too much about the future and not enough about the present. And again, you saw this at the trade deadline, right? He didn't trade any of his top 7 prospects to get better. You gave 12 prospects in your farm system that were, they're not great prospects. 12 guys for 4 guys, 3 in your bullpen and 1 center fielder. And you basically gave quantity instead of quality to get even better at the major league level for this year. It's more about the possibilities of next year than about the present. David Stearns believed that this roster is good enough. And we all agree that's probably not. Now, again, can we all be wrong in October and the Mets are in the playoffs and they're going on a run? Yeah, absolutely. We all would love to be wrong, but facts are facts. Right now, on August 23rd, on this Saturday, playing the Braves, the facts are the facts. The rotation is not that good. The bullpen acquisitions haven't been good except for Gregory Soto. And Tyler Rogers has been okay. And Ryan Helsley has been a complete disaster. So the issue with Stearns is the fact that I have no problem with you worrying about your farm system and talking about sustained success. But you can't have sustained success if you're not worried about the present. If you're not worrying about the present season and too concerned about 26 and 27 and 28, I don't care. Your payroll should get you into the playoffs every year. It's not a mandate. It's not a guarantee, obviously, because it's baseball. But it needs to be more of an urgency here. And I talk about this so many years when the Mets go on these type of runs and have really good season, and they're far and few between, right? I talk about 22. I talked about last year, and I talked about this year. They've half-assed deadlines year after year. This is multiple GMs, multiple guys running, multiple executives running teams. This isn't the same guy. If this was the same guy, I have more of a problem with just that one guy. But this has been a trend, right? This has been, Brody Van Wagenen. This has been, Billy Epler. This has been David Stearns. This is going on, 2, years of opportunities where, with we talked about 2021 and bringing in Javi Baez. We talked about when the team wasn't good enough. That was a dumb trade within itself. Not because they traded PCA. It was because they traded PCA for Javier Baez, not being just that one missing piece. There was more to that with a team that wasn't good. 2022, getting Vogelback, Naquin, Ruff, and Givens wasn't good enough. Last year, acquiring Paul Blackburn when you should have got a better starting pitcher, knowing that all these guys had so many innings under their belt and haven't pitched that many innings in years. And you just assumed that it was just going to take you to the promised land. You needed a better starting pitcher. Maybe you could have used another bullpen arm or two. Maybe you could have used another bat. You could have found that extra DH and make the lineup even better than what it was, right? Just because you're good at something doesn't mean that you can't make your strength better. And this is what annoys me about the Mets organization as a whole. They always come up short at the deadline, and it's the teams that you lose to in the playoffs that made that big move, made multiple big moves to strengthen their best part of the roster, right? The Padres, who already had a really good bullpen, strengthened their bullpen. There's nothing wrong with making one part of your team that's already good even better. And that's always frustrates me, right? We lost to the Dodgers last year. How much money did they spend? Yet they went out and still got a rotation on, even though all those injuries, they were coming back slowly but surely. They were going to be part of this rotation in the playoffs, but they still went out and got a Jack Flaherty. They still went out and get bullpen arms. They still went out and get Tommy Edman. Even though they had a ton of position players already, they still acquired that. They acquired from their strength. And that is something that the Mets don't do. The Mets fill holes that was desperately needed, and we're counting on the acquisitions to fill those holes at a big level. But what if you would have got a better bat for this lineup? How much better would the lineup be? Right? The starting pitching, you didn't do nothing at all. So, there was not even a Paul Blackburn acquisition. So I just don't understand the lack of urgency at deadlines. I just don't understand it. At some point, you have to make the big move at the deadline. At some point, you have to trade prospects. The Padres did it this year. Now, I'm not saying the Padres are going to be, the team that made those big acquisitions, made those big moves, traded a lot of their top prospects. They've been doing it for years, by the way, right? This has been a 3-4 year trend now where they've done big trade deadlines. And again, it didn't get in the World Series, didn't get into their final goal. But I don't have no problem with a GM doing it and going for it, right? It's not always going to work, but I'd rather talk about an offseason of what if they made this move than they made this move. I'm blaming the players. Because at some point, you can blame AJ Preller all you want. But he's making the moves necessary to strengthen his team. He's making the best moves. He's trading big top prospects to get his roster better. At some point, it's not the GM's fault. It's the players on the field, right? The Padres shouldn't blame Preller. He brought in Juan Soto. He made many signings. He made multiple deadline acquisitions that were trading top 5, top 10 prospects all over the place. It's up to the players to perform in that spot. But when you get into the playoffs and your GM or president of baseball doesn't do the necessary moves and willing to get uncomfortable and make that big trade that everybody's like, whoa, the Yoenis Cespedes trade. Right? Nobody's blaming Sandy Alderson for the Mets failing in the World Series, for making those errors, making those bad throwing plays, playing bad defense. Nobody blamed Alderson for that. They blamed the players. It was Yoenis Cespedes botching a ball in left field in game 1 of the World Series. It is Daniel Murphy making a bad play. It is Lucas Duda throwing the ball away, trying to throw home. That's the problem. Terry Collins leaving Matt Harvey in, even though every Met fan was going crazy when they did, right? It's decisions like that, on the field decisions, where you can blame the players, not the GM when they made the move. That is something that a lot of people don't like to talk about. But David Stearns deserves all the blame for this situation. Ryan Helsley is a David Stearns acquisition having a 9 ERA. Tyler Rogers. Now, nobody was blaming Stearns for bad moves. Like, those weren't bad moves. They were really good moves. They were good moves, but there needed to be more. You should have got Luis Robert. You should have got a starter at the deadline, and you can say whatever the hell you want when it comes to, well, those guys didn't get traded, right? They're still not bringing up Brandon Sproat. They're still not bringing up Jonah Tong. What are you waiting for? If you don't think they're ready or you don't think they're good enough, then get rid of them for somebody who's actually good. I just don't understand that. What are we waiting for with Brandon Sproat? Why is he pitching in Syracuse on Monday and not pitching at Citi Field against the Phillies in Game 1 on Monday? Why? Why does Kodai Senga have to start in that game? Why? It doesn't make no sense. It makes no sense. There's no sense of urgency. If the Mets lose and don't make the playoffs, and it ends up being a game, a half a game, whatever it might be, we're going to go back in the offseason and say, why didn't you bring these kids up? Why didn't you do that? And I am not the biggest prospect hugger. Everybody knows that. But when there's a need and the deadline is passed and you have internal options, there's no reason to wait. I'm sorry. Jonah Tong should be up here along with Brandon Sproat. I don't give a shit if you got to DFA somebody or what. I don't care if you got to throw 4 guys in the bullpen. I don't give a shit. Kodai Senga, if you need a 7-man rotation, I don't care. Throw these guys. It just doesn't make sense to me. Doesn't make sense. You failed at the deadline. All right, you have internal options. Use them. It's nearly a month, almost a month after the trade deadline, and we're still talking about guys that shouldn't be pitching in this rotation. Like, are we really going to see McGill before Brandon Sproat? Because McGill has been pitching really good in the minors. I truly believe we're going to see McGill before we see Brandon Sproat or Jonah Tong. Adorable. Okay, but how do they know that? The guy has been lights out for the last, 8 starts in AAA when he started off very slow? Like, mentally ready, how do they know that? He's been pitching lights out in AAA, so they can't tell me that he's not mentally ready. You know what? Show me. You know what? At least they're making the initiative to say, hey, listen, we brought him up. He wasn't ready. I would be okay with that. I said it. Like, bring him up so we can see that's why they should have brought him up in June. All these guys, or at least 2 of them, McLean and Sproat. You brought him up in June instead of pitching Waddell and Hageman and pitching openers. You had an opportunity to bring these kids up and see what you actually have prior to the trade deadline. You didn't do that. So you were wasting innings in the minors with these guys. You brought up McLean too late, but we all know the reason why. Brandon Sproat, if he's not mentally ready, then you should have traded him for a proven pitcher. If you don't think he's mentally ready, what are you waiting for? Like, I just don't understand it. Well, Joel, yeah, they're probably playing with it. I mean, they'll probably bring somebody up, but again, the Frankie Montas news came up and Brazaban came up. But yeah, I mean, right now, I think they're playing with a 2-man bench, but, because I think Nimmo is not available. So, you're not putting Nimmo on the IL. Like, if it's not, like, I don't get that. I'd put him on the IL and retroactive it, or, a few days for, to like the 18th or 19th, and he'll be back in a week. But they're afraid to do that. Again, it's indecision. It's indecisiveness on what to do. And that's what I think it is. I think it's indecisive at the trade deadline, scared to make a move, scared to make the big move because of whatever reason. The prospects might turn out really well, and you know what? I know people aren't the big fans of Salicata, but he said it the other day. He goes, I don't care who you trade and what they become. What do the guys that you acquire help you do? Because at the end of the day, nobody cared about Michael Fulmer and what he did for the Detroit Tigers, no matter what he did or became, because of what Yoenis Cespedes did for us in 2015. Nobody cared. And Yoenis Cespedes basically was shot after that. He wasn't the same player. And we gave him a contract. So it didn't matter. But we didn't care about Michael Fulmer after that. We care about PCA. Number one, we didn't win. And Javier Baez wasn't re-signed. So it didn't matter. But it's not about who you send away. It's about how did the acquisitions help your team, right? Nobody's going to care about Drew Gilbert if Tyler Rogers pitches outstanding in the postseason and takes us where we need to go. But if Tyler Rogers continues to fail and guys like Ryan Clifford or Jet Williams don't turn out and Gilbert becomes something with the Giants, we're going to be like, well, you didn't make that necessary move. You didn't get Luis Robert. You didn't get this guy. You didn't get that guy. Whatever it was, it is always going to be the what if in the offseason. That can't happen. You can't keep on saying what if. Like, you can't keep on saying what if. Make the necessary moves and let the players that you acquired do it on the field. If they don't do it and there was no unnecessary or lack of move that you didn't make, but you made all the necessary moves possible to better your team, then it's on the players. I said it right before the trade deadline. If David Stearns makes the necessary moves and fills all the holes and gets the team better, gets better players in here, like a starter, like a couple of bullpen arms, like a better center fielder, it's on the players. Like, he filled the center fielder's hole. Cedric Mullins. I'm blaming Cedric Mullins. I am not blaming Stearns because of Cedric Mullins' play. But you have to blame David Stearns just a little bit because he went the cheaper route because he wasn't willing to give up what was necessary for Luis Robert. We heard the news the other day with John Heyman about the Twins wanted one of the Mets' top 6 prospects for Joan Duran, who was under team control for a couple more years. So you would have gave up a top 6 prospect which could have been possible. Any of them. They didn't care which one. They wanted one of them for Joan Duran with the possibility of Edwin Diaz opting out, which, guys, do you really think David Stearns is going to pay more money for an older Edwin Diaz? Do you really think that? Come on. Like, let's be real about that. Like, you would have had your closer for at least the next 2 years who is outstanding. And you would have had him right now to help your team, who would have probably been better than Ryan Helsley. So instead of giving up 3 prospects, lower prospects for Helsley, you could have gave up 1 top 6 prospect, and you would have had a better reliever. It's those little things that are a problem, right? The starting pitching, David Stearns did nothing, right? Trying to, save face on bringing up McLean and still not, let's say, even if they would have brought up Sproat for Monday, he's trying to save face up at this point because that's his only bullets left in that gun. I don't like to use that reference, but that's all I had in my mind at the moment when it comes to, a talking point. The fact that that's all the bullets he has left. He can't do anything else. His last hope for any success this season, the rest of the season, and in the playoffs is Nolan McLean, and if they even bring up Sproat. Like, that's his last options. Because we know Tyler McGill comes back, and it ain't going to be nothing special. It's not. Like, it's just, well, again, Joel, Kyle Finnegan is not a bad option, but it's another cheap route that doesn't need to be a cheap route. It doesn't. You should re-sign Edwin Diaz. You know what? You should sign, or you should have traded for Joan Duran, and we wouldn't have to worry about that. You could let Edwin Diaz go, and nobody's going to bat an eye. Some people might complain because Met fans love to complain because they fall in love with players, or fall in love with a song rather than the player itself. But it would be the smart move letting Diaz go, knowing that you have Joan Duran for basically pennies on the dollar compared to Diaz, and he's one of the top closers in baseball. So it's just the ongoing issues The Luis Robert news came out about what the White Sox wanted, which, again, I don't believe was too much, to be quite honest with you, right? I think that the Joan Duran news is even worse, considering the fact that you were going to have Duran for the next couple of seasons and be under control, so you wouldn't have to worry about Diaz. Because maybe it might come to Diaz and be like, maybe it ain't smart to opt out because I am making $20 million. If I opt out, maybe I won't get as much. Maybe it'll have him thinking, hey, I perform well in New York with the Mets. Why do I want to leave this? He might stay there, and now you got a 1-2 combination in the 8th and 9th that are probably the best in baseball. Like, it's Kev, I understand that, but I hate saying my own name. It's annoying. Like, I'm sorry. I can't say it. I said it before, right? I know it's Luis Robert, but I say Robert enough with my name. I don't need to say it again. Like, this is my escape from reality a little bit on the channel, right? So I say Robert because Robert, it just doesn't sound right coming out of my mouth at all. So so that's the reason why. But unfortunately, David Stearns half-assed another deadline. Right? Nobody was bitching and moaning, even though people bitch and moan about the Tyler Rogers move because of Gilbert, but those were the right moves. Right? Those weren't bad moves. Let me not say the right moves because we don't know that yet. Right now, Helsley looks terrible, but those were good moves at that time. Because we didn't know. We know the Mets were in on Joan Duran, but we didn't know what was asked to give up for Joan Duran. But right after Duran went to the Phillies, the Mets made the Helsley move, and everybody was like, okay, that's a good backup. That was a good alternative because Ryan Helsley has been good. So, again, I'm blaming Ryan Helsley because he's not doing his job. I'm not blaming David Stearns. David Stearns got bullpen arms. These are good acquisitions. Gregory Soto was a solid acquisition. Rogers and Helsley were very good acquisitions. If they don't perform, it's on the player. So I'm not blaming David Stearns for that. But when you hear you gave up three prospects for Ryan Helsley, who is a free agent after this year, instead of Joan Duran, who has control for one top 6 prospect, it's kind of silly to think that you wouldn't do that move. So again, it's quantity over quality again. And that is where I get frustrated with David Stearns, right? He brings up sustained success all the time, but sustained success also has to deal with the present. If you don't do enough in the present to help your team win, and you're basically leaking a tremendous amount of oil out of your rotation, where Clay Holmes is running on fumes. Nolan McLean is good, but is he going to be enough? He pitches once every week. It's not enough. Like, if Kodai Senga doesn't step up, Sean Manaea doesn't step up, and I don't think Sean Manaea has another gear, to be quite honest with you. I think those loose bodies in his elbow is a problem, and I think that's why he's not doing well. I think it's a huge problem, and nobody wants to talk about that, and everybody is talking about Manaea being healthy. He's probably not. He's going to have elbow surgery at the end of the year to remove those loose bodies, and that's a minimum surgery, a minor surgery. Let's hope there ain't nothing more wrong with Manaea, and there'll be another disaster. And again, I think loose bodies in the elbow is pitching hurt, like Juan just said. I think it is. Like, those loose bodies move around in your elbow. So when you're throwing 85 pitches, when you're throwing a bullpen on your, in between a start, and when you're warming up to have your start, those loose bodies move around. If they move in the wrong spot, it's not just about pain. It's about the ability for your arm to move in certain ways to throw a pitch. And I think it's affecting him. Manaea is a bulldog. I always give him that, right? He's a bulldog. He's going to give everything he has. But everything he has might not be enough because of the elbow situation. It's not even about the oblique anymore. Nobody's talking about the oblique. The oblique is fully healthy, according to all the reports. I think it's the elbow. I think it's the loose bodies. And that's not going to – you can't do anything now unless you remove them surgically. You can't do that because he'll miss the rest of the year. So That's the problem. That is the major issue where I always said the biggest need was rotation help. I said that. I didn't care about the going out and getting Luis Robert or Cedric Mullins. I thought the Mets could have survived not getting any of those guys because I think the offense still is based on the top 4 guys in the lineup. If they're doing their job, the lineup will be fine. They would be fine. You know, you had 21 hits yesterday, right? It's a lot of the guys that got those hits that have been here prior to trade deadline. I know Mullins got a couple of hits, but overall, you got 21 hits. The other 19 hits came from guys that were on your team this year, along with Soto. So we have to understand that, and I said it from day one. The starting pitching was always going to be, because I always expect a team that's in contention to get better bullpen arms. That's always something that every team does. No matter if you have a good bullpen or not, you always add another bullpen arm or 2. You always do. It's just how it goes every year. Bullpen arms are a mandatory addition at the deadline. That is not something to even think about. The rotation was the biggest glaring need, and I said that from day one. I knew it was going to be a glaring need, and you did not do anything. And not only did you not bring up your top prospects to help this rotation in June, you waited so long because of draft picks and service time. Now Nolan McLean has made only 2 starts. At the end of the year, he'll make maybe 6 if we're lucky, 5 maybe. And Brandon Sproat, at this point, is pitching on Monday for Syracuse instead of with the New York Mets at Citi Field against Philly. Kodai Senga is making that start on Monday. So if you just do the math, we got 34 games to go. He pitches on Monday. That means he won't be available Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. He might pitch Saturday or Sunday. So that's another 6 games off the schedule. Plus today and tomorrow. So that's 7 games off the schedule. So let's do the math. What is that? 27 more games? So you be with 27 more games left in the season, and Brandon Sproat might make his appearance next Saturday or Sunday. So we're going to be down another 7 or 8 games before Brandon Sproat is going to hopefully pitch for the Mets. I just don't understand it. Yeah, I still think, even with their inconsistencies, I don't think the Reds are good enough. I think the Mets are going to, even if the Mets trip into the playoffs, who cares? It doesn't matter. Like, we've seen teams basically stumble into the playoffs. You know, we all forget the Mets didn't control their own destiny at the end of the season last year. The Diamondbacks had to lose, and the Braves had to fall apart at the end of the year as well. Like, the Mets didn't only just have to win, they had to get a lot of help. And they got a ton of help. That was a lot of luck to make the playoffs last year. We basically, as good as we were, and the hottest team in baseball since June last year, they needed a tremendous amount of help the last week of the season. And they got that help along with winning. Now, you give them credit for winning, but they also needed the Diamondbacks to lose. They needed the Braves to not play as well down the stretch, because that led to playing the Braves in that doubleheader to give us the opportunity to make the playoffs, because all they had to do was win at that point. And the Diamondbacks had to lose the day before, and they did. But it was a lot of luck. We stumbled into the playoffs. Even though we were playing well, it wasn't just we win and we're in. That week, remember what happened when we had to beat the Brewers. We didn't play well against the Brewers. So it was still up in the air that the Mets would even make the playoffs. So we stumbled into the playoffs. Even though playing so well, we had to get a lot of help. So we stumbled. Even if the Mets stumble into the playoffs, let's say they still don't play that well. They play a little bit better, not great. Let's say they play 500 baseball the rest of the way. 500 baseball, what is it, 34 games? 17-17. Another 17, 10, 78, what is that? 85 wins, 86 wins. That might get you the third wild card, right? I can't do math right now. I'm sorry. Let me just double check. Hold on 1 second. 85 wins. So my math was right. You guys, come on. Don't doubt my math. Please do, because it sucks. 85 wins. If they go 500, that's 85 wins. Is it possible that the Reds, and again, we play the Reds in September, the first week of September, after the Tigers, I believe. that can probably make a deciding factor. That is why it's important to get a 2, 3, maybe even 4-game lead in the wild card. And I don't think we have to play that well. The Reds have not played well. The Phillies, I keep on saying, the Phillies have not played well. The Mets just played so bad. That's why I said, get to the Philly series at home within 4 or 5 games, because that can make a tremendous difference. You take 2 out of 3, you're right back in that race. Not only you're back in that race, I guarantee you, you're going to have more than a 1.5 game lead by the time, with the Reds. And by the end of the month, the Reds might be 4 or 5 games back if the Mets just play decent baseball. Win the next 2 series. Win this series. Win the Philly series. And let me see. Hold on. Let me just double check. I just want to make sure. I think that's the last series. I think one more after that, after the Phillies, if I'm not mistaken. Let's see. I think that's it. Miami. So win this series against the Braves. You can do that today by winning. Go home for 7 games. Win the Philly series 2 out of 3. And you got 4 games against Miami. Win 3 out of 4. And I guarantee you, on September 1st, the Mets will have at least a 2-game lead, maybe even more, against the Reds. And I still feel, and this is not confidence in the New York Mets. It is the lack of confidence that I have in the Phillies playing good, because they haven't played good. Again, guys, they've been playing barely 500, a little over 500 baseball. The Mets have been playing well under 500 baseball. That is the difference in where the Mets are and the Phillies are division-wise. That is the 6-game difference. Remember when I talked about it last week? The Mets were 1-9, and the Phillies were 5-5. That was the difference of the division, 5 games at the time. Play 500 baseball, I guarantee you'll gain a couple of games against the Phillies. And you'll gain games on the Reds. It's just simple math. It doesn't mean the Mets are confident in the Mets. It's just that they don't have to play great. Like, playing 500 baseball the rest of the way gets you 85 wins. Anything better than that, we're talking about 88, 89 wins. And I think that will easily get us into the playoffs. And by the way, guys, the Phillies have to play 500 baseball to maintain a 91, 92 game average. So if they slip up a little bit, they're talking about sub 90 wins. Like, there's a possibility, and I don't think this is going to happen, but there's a possibility with their 34 games remaining that, let me just see. If they go 17-17, that is 91 wins. So if they go 500, that's 91 wins. If they play a little bit under 500, they're sub 90 wins. There can be an NL East division winner that has less than 90 wins. That's a possibility. Because the Phillies have shown no signs of going 8-2, 9-1 in 10 in the last 10 games. They've been playing 5-5, 6-4, 4-6. They've been doing that over the last month and a half. It's just that the Mets have been 2-8, 1-9. And that has been the difference. And yes, though, I already talked about Mike Puma's tweet about Brandon Sproat. That's unfortunate. I was very pissed off by that. It annoyed me. I actually screenshotted it because I wanted to remember to talk about it. And just so everybody, if you're just tuning in, thank you for tuning into the channel, to the Mets pregame. Mets playing about 25 minutes or so, again, or about a half hour until they face Game 2 of the Braves. Mike Puma, about a half hour ago, said, I am told Brandon Sproat remains on course to pitch tomorrow for Syracuse, which is Sunday. No plans to insert him on Monday. It will be Senga, who just finished his bullpen. So he brought up Tong as well. Well, I expected that. He just brought that up too. Let me just double check. Let me just give you the info that Dolo Sport, he brought up Brandon's Jonathan. Okay, so here we go, guys. The wind has shifted in the Mets organization in recent days regarding Jonathan. His name is entering the conversation for this season. He is scheduled to pitch tonight for Syracuse. All right, so let's just have a quick conversation about that. So Mike Puma, prior to this tweet 13 minutes ago, About a half hour ago, Mike Puma said that Brandon Sproat is making his start for Syracuse tomorrow, and there was no plans of him coming up to pitch on Monday or on Sunday. I'm sorry, on Monday for the Mets. It would be Senga. But there has been conversations in the Mets organization that Jonah Tong might be a candidate now to come up. But again, he's pitching tonight for Syracuse. So again, we're in the same boat, right? If he was going to, if they're confident in Jonah Tong more than Sproat, why isn't he pitching tonight over Clay Holmes? You could have pushed Clay Holmes back a day, let him pitch tomorrow, and have David Peterson ready for Monday against the Phillies, and then push back Sanger an extra day. We all know he loves extra days. He could pitch Tuesday. So this doesn't even make sense. Now, it gets more people excited because people love Jonah Tong. But again, if he pitches tonight, we're not going to see him until Friday or Saturday of next week. And that would be in the Marlins series. As I continue to look at the schedule again, just to make sure. Yes, it would be the Marlins series either that Friday or Saturday. If he pitches today, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He could pitch. No, he could actually pitch on Thursday or Friday of the Marlins series. Like, why wouldn't you bring Jonah Tong up today? Like, have it ready. Like, if there was conversations that Brandon Sproat, they don't think he's mentally ready. Let's just say that's the fact. But they like Jonah Tong and feel like he has that mentality more than Sproat at the moment. Then pitch him tonight. That should have been planned. You would have had McLean and Sproat on Tong back to back. And you would have had them ready to go to pitch to start that Miami series. Because right now, if I'm not mistaken, 1, 2, 3, 4. Nolan McLean is set for the third game against the Phillies, the finale of the Phillies series on Wednesday. I just don't know. Freshly, let's just hope so. And thank you for being a member. I appreciate that. Let's go. Let's get that sweep. But we gotta win it, worry about taking the first two first. We gotta win today, get that series win, and let's talk about a sweep tomorrow. That's what we want. That's what we want. So, Mullen, I agree. I'm not mentally ready for decisions by David Stearns. Like, mentally, I'm shot. This has been the season from hell. From the highs of highs to the lows of lows to the mental hits that we've taken as a fan base because of the lack of moves from David Stearns, the lack of urgency from David Stearns and this team, by the way. I think the lack of urgency has been there as well. But the lack of urgency to not still have this is the indecision that I talk about, the indecisiveness. Do they really know what they're doing here? Like, all we heard that Brandon Sproat was the other option after McLean. We didn't even think about Jonah Tong because it wasn't even talked about. Now, in recent days, like, what's changed in a week that all of a sudden the organization believes Jonah Tong is more mentally ready or more prepared or ready to make his MLB debut over Brandon Sproat? What changed in a week? They've both been pitching outstanding. So this is the indecisiveness where either David Stearns can't make his decision or there's too much back and forth in the offices with the executives where some might like Brandon Sproat and some might like Jonah Tong more. This is where I think that's more of the problem. Obviously, David Stearns should just make a goddamn decision, and I think this indecisiveness is going to hurt us. I truly believe that. I truly believe that there's too much back and forth, where there's too many voices in one room, where I guarantee you there's someone on the room, on one side of the room, that like Brandon Sproat, that thinks he deserves to be coming up first over Jonah Tong. And there's some in the room that Jonah Tong should get that start before Brandon Sproat. And Dolo, Sproat might give up more runs, but he's been really good. But again, this is what I'm saying, though. We didn't hear Jonah Tong name as a possibility until today. It wasn't even a conversation. It was about Brandon Sproat being the next guy. So he was giving up more runs, which he was, but he was still pitching well. It's the indecisiveness of the front office that makes no sense. Because it makes you wonder, do they know what the hell they're doing? Why is there so much indecisiveness? And I think it is David Stearns being indecisive. He did it both times at the trade deadline. He's had 2 deadlines with the New York Mets. He gave you Paul Blackburn, Stanek, Maton, and that's basically it. And Winker. Like, it was fine additions, but it wasn't enough. Blackburn wasn't going to be a part of this rotation in the playoffs. We needed somebody that was able to pitch in the playoffs as a rotation piece. So 2 indecisive trade deadlines where he didn't make that extra move that could cost you at the end. Now that they did a total 180 from Brandon Sproat, now the Jonah Tong as a possibility, yet Tong pitches tonight for Syracuse. This is the indecisiveness that is wasting innings and wasting games for the Mets and wasting innings in the minors for those guys. I just don't understand. The lack of urgency is not there. It's not there. It's frustrating. It's so annoying. And I'm getting to the point where I don't know what the hell David Stearns is doing. Why isn't Tong pitching tonight? You could have pushed everybody back. You could have gave extra rest, especially for David Peterson, who's pitching tomorrow, where you can give him an extra day's rest, knowing that he pitched 8 innings his last start. That would have made sense. And then you give Senga an extra day. So now you got Peterson and Senga and Manaea in the Philly series. Now you're not going to have that. You're going to have Peterson missing the Philly series, who pitches tomorrow. So you're going to have Senga, Manaea, and McLean, which is fine. But Senga, Manaea going against Philly, the way they pitched, I mean, come on. Yeah, Joel, no. I think he does. That's the problem. I think he has too much confidence in his decisions putting this roster together. I think he thinks they can win despite other moves, in my opinion. I don't think they can win. I think that he is so confident in his philosophy that it does not matter what else he does or what he shouldn't do, or what he doesn't do. Because I guarantee you, his first comments, the state of the Mets after the season's over, whenever that may be, he's going to say, I thought we had a good enough roster. Well, you clearly didn't. And he's going to make that excuse. And my Holy, I agree. He's going to be here now, but he's pitching tonight for Syracuse. I don't know, guys. I don't know. But let's talk about this game before we finish up the stream. We got Clay Holmes on the mound, Mr. 5 innings. So, again, I'm okay with Clay Holmes pitching 5 innings. Like, this is what he is, right? Give me 5 innings, 2 runs, and I will give him credit because that's all he can do. The problem with Clay Holmes is that nobody else is doing anything except for, now McLean and Peterson, which is nice, but Sho Manaea and Kodai Senga are now the problem. Clay Holmes isn't a problem anymore. He pitches his 5 innings and gives his team a chance to win. That's all I can ask for from Clay Holmes. Like, I'm not mad at Clay Holmes. Like, why am I mad at a guy that I know that couldn't do it anyway? That couldn't go deeper into games. I've always said that. So I'm not mad at him. He is what he is. So give me 5 innings, 2 runs, and give us a chance to win. That's all I hope that the offense scores runs. That's it. You're going against Kyle Quantrill. Beat him up. Well, I mean, Peter, they can't eat his contract. Technically, they are. But they're going to keep him on the 40-man and on the IL because the insurance now, because he's probably going to have Tommy John, that insurance to pay his contract is going to kick in. So that $34 million, or at least the $17 million and what's left of this year, is going to be paid by insurance. So the Mets aren't going to be liable out of pocket for that money. They're going to be the insurance is going to take on that money. So he's not getting DFA'd. That wouldn't make sense because then they would have to pay out of pocket to pay the rest of his contract. So And I don't think you can DFA a player and eat the money while a guy's injured. I think that's a CBA rule. So they're saving money because the insurance is going to pay for it while he's hurt. So that's insured. That contract's insured. So there's no concern there. And he was coming off an injury-plagued season, last couple of seasons, so clearly he was insured. So, yeah, it is what it is. It is what. Okay, so let's just talk about the lineup. The lineup is a little different, right? You got Alonso batting third, Vientos batting fourth, Soto and Lindor 1-2. You got McNeil fifth, Marte sixth, Beatty seventh, Taylor getting the start of the center field over Cedric Mullins, and Hayden Sanger is still the catcher because Luis Torrens is still going through what he's going through right now. And again, Sanger got a couple of hits, Taylor got a couple of hits, so play him, right? Play the hot hand. Even though Mullins got a couple of hits, I don't know. I just think there's something about Taylor. Like I don't think Taylor's very good offensively, but when he starts to hit, play him because there's a lot of hits in that bat when he's hot. Because we saw it last year. Like he was so clutch for the Mets last year. It was insane as a backup outfielder, taking the job from Bader. So yeah, Brad, I understand that, but you can't waste the hits from Taylor. When Taylor looks like he's good at the plate, I want to play him. Honestly, because he's a guy that comes through when he's hitting. And right now he looks like he's hitting right now. Put him in there. I have no problem with that. With Nimmo not knowing what he's going to do, you can, put Taylor in center or Mullins in left. I don't care. And that's the thing, my holy, like we saw what Taylor can do, not just during the season, but late in the year, his clutch hitting in the playoffs, how good he was. Him and Marte was our best hitters in the postseason. While everybody else was fine, but those two guys were clutch. And when I think Mendoza really sees it, he's like, you know what? When Taylor gets hot, and it's very rare, he'll put a 3 or 4 game stretch of games where he looks really good with the bat. So I think you're going to take full advantage of it. I have no problem with that. Tomorrow, if Nimmo's not back, you play Mullins and you play Taylor. Why not? And Marte will be on the bench, and you can use him in a pinch hit situation if that comes up. So with that said, guys, we got a game in about 15 minutes, 20 minutes or so. Mets are on the verge of winning the series against the Braves in Atlanta. It's up to Clay Holmes. It's up to this Mets lineup. You win today, you're guaranteed a series win. You guarantee being at least a game and a half up on the Reds, maybe 2.5 games if the Reds lose. If the Phillies lose, we're 5 games out of the division, going for the sweep tomorrow. And with that, the possibility of the Mets, if the Phillies lose and the Reds lose, the Mets can gain a game on Philly, be 5 games out of the division, and gain another game on the Reds. That'll be 2.5. Going for the sweep tomorrow, and there's a possibility the Mets might be as close to the division as they are ahead in the third wild card. Guys, as I said, be within 4 or 5 games going into that Philly series on Monday. And I'd be very confident that series is going to determine who's going to win the NL East, in my opinion. Even if the Mets sweep the Phillies and then they're only 2 games out of the division, I think that demoralizes the Phillies. No Wheeler. Duran blew a game against the Nationals. The Phillies, again, guys, I don't think the Phillies are as good as people are making them out to be. The Mets just have played so bad. Don't believe in that Philly hype. The Philly fan who was here yesterday talking about Philly this, Philly that, he's just lying to himself. He can't look himself in the mirror and realize the Phillies aren't that good. They're a good team, but they're not as good as everybody's putting them out to be. Let's show it. And it starts tonight by winning the series against the Braves. If everything works in our favor and the Phillies lose and the Nationals lose, and the Reds lose, we're right where we need to be. As I said, the stars might be aligning for the New York Mets. Not because They won yesterday, and they looked good with the McLean start, the offense, all that stuff. But with the Wheeler injury, that's a big blow to the Phillies. They lost their ace. With the Phillies blowing a lead in the ninth and losing to the Nationals, with the Reds losing yesterday, the stars might be aligning for the Mets to take that opportunity, take that chance, the third chance they got to move forward and finally start to take control over their own destiny. With that said, guys, enjoy the game. Let's hope we're talking about a Mets win. I will be doing a post game tonight after the game. So hopefully we're talking about a Mets win. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. Before you go, wait for the stream to end. It's going to take you to that post game stream. Hit that like button early, guys. The more likes we get early, the more this is going to get at the top of the list on people who wants to see this type of content. So hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. Wait for it to redirect you to the post game stream. Hit that like button, guys. Let's go Mets, guys, and I'll see you tonight on the post game show, guys. Let's go Mets.
Seven train rumble, headed to the field. Orange and blue vibes, the energy revealed. Brooklyn to Queens, repping both